Super Mario 64, Mario Kart 64, Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, Banjo-Kazooie, and the original Super Smash Bros. Those are the few popular game franchises in the world that is exclusive to one console, the Nintendo 64. It sold millions of copies during the Nintendo 64 lifespan. But why Filipinos never knew or played most of this Nintendo 64 games? Let's go back to the summer of 1997, where I personally saw at a local game shop a brand new Nintendo 64 for the first time after months of hype. There are only two games available that day, Super Mario 64 and Turok. First time seeing Mario in 3D is weird, but playing Mario 64 and experiencing Mario moving in a three-dimensional world is really fun and seems like a breath of fresh air. At that time Nintendo 64 is competing with two other consoles, the Sega Saturn, whose main selling point is it can port arcade games on the console, and the new kid on the block, the PlayStation, who promised better graphics and larger storage due to its CD format. Nintendo 64 became popular for a brief time, and like the Sega Saturn, it suffers from the lack of good games available due to high prices. The rental demand for the N64 declined, and due to the small number of good games at launch, many gamers who loved Nintendo since the Famicom days turned their focus to the PlayStation. Potential buyer of the consoles opted to wait until the lineup of games become better. On the other hand, many rental shop owners whose business is renting their unit to players for 50 pesos or around $2 at that time for an hour choose not to buy more N64 unit but instead stick to SNES and Sega Genesis, which is still popular at that time and have a huge library of good games. By the time Nintendo 64 started to produce quality games, the Sony PlayStation already established its market in the Philippines as the new king of consoles. Other theory that may contribute to Nintendo 64's early decline is the fact that the console is released during the Asian financial crisis, which hit the country's economy badly. Sony PlayStation 1 also have a great marketing strategy in its early stage. Doubter and skeptics to the new 3D technology was presented of games with familiar gameplay and improved 2D sprite but on a 3D rendered background with longer game hours and more in-game content compared to the SNES and Sega Genesis. Games like Mega Man X4, Castlevania Symphony of the Night and the RPG Suikoden 2 hook gamers to try the new console. The added content and game hours to a game adds more value to the game they purchase. Early in PlayStation life cycle, they also demonstrated how fluid and superior their 3D rendering processor compared to Nintendo 64. It took N64 years to improve their graphic with the introduction of expansion pack, and unlike the Nintendo 64, the PS1 has great releases of third-party games like Tekken 3, Final Fantasy VII and Tomb Raider series, showing how powerful and publisher-friendly the console compares to the N64. The popularity of PlayStation and the continued support of shop owners to SNES and Sega Genesis until the 2000s leaves the Nintendo 64 in obscurity. You may also add the ugly fact that modded PS1 becoming rampant all over the world, allowing the unit to play any region, even pirated CD, thus making the PS1 more affordable for average consumers and profitable to rental shop owner. During its lifespan, Nintendo 64 never stood a chance against the PS1. And because of this we all know Alundra, but we are not that familiar with the adventure of Link. We love kart racing because of Crash and the gang, but we didn't know Nintendo's all-star lineup is having the same party in N64, and we love JRPG because of the PS1 instead of 3D platformer, and for that brief summer of 1997 we all thought that the Super Nintendo will pass the crown to its successor, but we are all wrong. Looking back now, Filipino gamer may be familiar with Nintendo 64 games, but we haven't really experienced the game until Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack gives us access to the library of great Nintendo 64 games. And that is the reason Nintendo 64 games never played by Filipino gamers. If you like our videos, please like, share and subscribe. It's your support that boosts our morale and improve in our craft. Thank you.